So I think I left myself off at Palm Tree. Also, wait, I should check if the audio is good. It looks good. I didn't change anything about the audio in this game, so it should be fine. Oh, God. Get me away from these peasants. Okay. So, it's gonna take me a while to get back into things, but... Well, actually, maybe I'm just a legend. Maybe I'm just gonna nail this. Ooh! He's styling! So, for those who haven't seen this game, it's, a getting over it like is the easiest way for people to understand it, probably. As much as some people would probably hate it being called that. Probably the developers of the game would hate it being called that, because nobody wants to live in anybody else's shadow. But that's the easiest way to describe it. It is a game with intentionally difficult and weird controls that pushes the difficulty to the limits and also has no direct checkpoint system. At any moment, you are able to fall back to basically the beginning of the game. Which to many is probably an immediate turnoff. Because video games aren't typically the thing people seek out more frustration for. But it's not really about the frustration for me. It's just an actual enjoyment in getting good at really stupid control schemes. I find that really fun for some reason. But then you get situations like that, you know? Then you get situations where it could be seen as frustrating that I just lost that progress, but hey, because I have lost that exact progress hundreds of times already, I am good enough and have the consistency required to get back to where I was pretty easily. That's what it's all about. It's about a game forcing you into absolute mastery in order for you to even beat the game. Which not a lot of games do. And not a lot of games can do. Because for a lot of games, you know, even something like I Wanna Be the Guy, you can say that that pushes the difficulty to the extremes, because it definitely does. A lot of fan games do, not specifically I Wanna Be the Guy. But, while there are some specific quirks to fan games that I'm sure many fan game players would attest to, specific things like really down to the nitty-gritty of how the physics work and having to do aligns for certain things and getting used to all of the regularly used gimmicks and that kind of thing. Like, it has its own level of mastery associated with it. But at its core, the majority, I'm not going to talk about things like avoidances and all of that, because at its core, fan games are platformers. And even if there is some level of uniqueness to the exact physics and gimmicks that fan games bring along, there is some skill that you can bring forward from other platformers you've played. It's gonna feel different, and it's gonna take a while to get used to the way the game controls. That sucks. But you still have a little bit of a head start if you've played a lot of platformers, right? In a game like this, it really puts you at rock bottom. You have no previous experience with anything like this, unless you are a gifted pogoer in real life. But even then, actual minimal amounts of skill translation there. So it's interesting to me to have something entirely foreign that there's no way you could have practiced prior to playing this game. It's just its own unique thing. And the amount of mastery it forces upon you is innately charming to me. Because I'm the kind of guy who likes getting good at dumb shit. And that's exactly what this is. It's also, I don't know, it's something special about, like, knowing that this skill will, like, never be useful again. Because, like, even in the case of fan games, if you wanted to argue that fan games are similar... Oh my god, let's go. Okay, that was close. I've only made it here twice. So this is actually a little tense. Forgive me. Oh god. Even if you want to argue that fan games are similar, which you definitely could make an argument for, though I would still say it's a little bit different. Whew. Okay. That's not exactly what I wanted. Yeah. Okay. Cool. 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 It's all very cool. But I mean, you can do cool shit like that, right? Like, who would have thought to pogo off the ceiling there to get the extra boost? Like, that's the kind of sick shit that you think up on the fly. That, like, I mean, it's just, it's hard to explain. Like, I don't know why I find it cool to be good at something that nobody could ever possibly care about. But yeah, that is like the primary difference in something like getting good at fan games. I mean, okay, I've mentioned like other differences, but the biggest difference to me is the fact that if you get good at fan games, that's an actually, like, I mean, I don't want to say applicable because it's still just a game. So using the term applicable is kind of weird, but even if you get good at fan games, like, that is a somewhat applicable skill outside of whatever fan game you're playing, because there are multiple fan games, and that's like a whole pseudo-genre that content keeps getting made for. Whereas for this, outside of the fact that the developers did add a new map to the game, so that is something to do after you've beaten the game. For the most part, once you beat this game, outside of, like, going for a faster time, which is definitely what some people have done, and definitely admirable to have a 3-minute time in this game. Like, that's just absurd. But outside of getting faster, there is nothing else to use this completely arbitrary, very pointless skill set for. Oh, awesome. You love to see that. So that's another, like, huge appeal of this genre to me, is the ability to recover after falling down. And I feel like the pogo stick lends to that so naturally, because, like, the farther you fall, if you land on your pogo stick, then the higher back you can bounce. But it is very frustrating to, like, land directly on the corner of something and just not be able to get any bounce back. That's the worst. And this particular section is kind of literally designed around that, because pretty much every surface here is, like, as pointy and jagged as possible to make it really awkward to climb and also hard to recover from if you fall. But that's more or less my stance on why I think this game and games like it are interesting. Can't fully explain it because it does all boil down to just my taste for getting good at something pointless. But I think it just boils down from, like, innately enjoying getting good at games. Like, I enjoy getting good at fighting games, I enjoy getting better at platformers, and I enjoy, you know, specifically to what I was just doing, enjoy getting better at fan games. So it's nice to be brought into a situation that gives you, like, a completely fresh start. Like, what was it like playing video games when you had never played video games before, right? Like, that's not something you can typically relive. Like, you can't play your first video game as if you had never played any other video game before. Like, that complete lack of control that people have when they first touch video games is something that's kind of hard to capture. But it is my belief that that is the huge appeal of this kind of game. Because by making the controls completely different than any other game, it really does capture that this is my first time playing a video game feeling. Because, like, you've never played anything like this. It's bizarre. It's difficult. And they ease you into it. Like, the stuff I'm doing at this part in the game, you can see my percentage up at the top. I'm currently 61% through the game, and also that was a really bad jump because I was looking at the percentage. Like, the first few obstacles are easy baby mode, which is why I wasn't that concerned when I reset my progress twice. Because, you know, it is, like, when you go back to that first section, it is like playing your first video game you've ever played after years of video game experience. Like, to put it in, like, literal terms, the first video game I ever played was, well, the first video game I ever owned and played at the very least, because that's the one I remember. I've played other video games before this, but as a very young child, so it's kind of hard to remember. But the first video game I ever owned... Oh, that was sick, dude! That was actually the sickest ceiling bounce I have ever gotten. I'm so proud of that one. The first video game I ever owned and played was SpongeBob and the Battle for Bikini Bottom, which is very funny because that just got a remaster recently, but if I were to play that game again, it would be no challenge at all. But as a child, I guarantee... No, dude! God, if I didn't hit my dummy thick ass on the rock, that would have been perfect. I spent hundreds of hours as a child playing Battle for Bikini Bottom. And I did beat it, but like, I beat it with extreme difficulty. And probably with a lot of assistance. Either from walkthroughs or videos. Or inviting my cousin over to help me. Inviting my friends over to help me. Right? Like that... Playing your first video game is a uniquely difficult experience. But after a lifetime of playing video games, that weird feeling is something you never get again. So back to the example I was positing as to why I wasn't afraid of resetting my game. It's because the difficulty of this game is so strictly gradiented. It's probably really bad phrasing, but it gets significantly harder. Exponentially harder, probably, the farther up you climb, and they are much, much less forgiving the farther up you climb. Like, they were giving really solid checkpoints fairly commonly within the first 50% of the game. But at the part I am at now, I believe I am at the last actual safe checkpointed area. But going back to those first areas, again, feels like... Because I played so much of this, it's familiar again. Like, I no longer have that feeling of... This is the first time I've ever played anything like this. Because I've got 30 fucking hours in this game. I would hope I still don't feel that way. But... because of the way the game was created, even when you get that, like, level of, like, genuine skill in a... okay, whatever. Send me back. Even when you get that level of newfound skill, and it is no longer a completely foreign experience to you, the game fucking ramps up the difficulty to what some may call an absurd degree. The things this game asks of you are a little ridiculous. But I think that's cool. I think it's cool that it's like its own entirely isolated challenge, and that there is nothing quite like it. There are other games with similar styles, like literally the game it was directly inspired off of, Getting Over It. But because of the vastly different method of control, it still maintains itself as an entirely unique challenge. Oh god. That's not gonna work out. I tried to do a ceiling bounce there, but just none of that felt right. So hopefully I've made a decent case for anybody who looks at something like this and is just like, oh, well, this just looks incredibly frustrating, I would never play this. Well, it's definitely something that would frustrate a large amount of people. I feel like I don't know. I feel like more people would enjoy it than they give themselves credit. It's similar to the way I feel about people who talk about programming. Like, there are so many people who just look at programming as something they could never do, which is very weird. I think it's mainly due to how programming is, I don't want to say marketed, because that's kind of weird, but that is kind of what I'm getting at, is like just the common aura surrounding programming has always been that it takes a special mind to do it. That's like complete bullshit and very stupid. Let's go. Dude, oh my god. But yeah, anybody can program. It doesn't take anything special. Complete dumb brains like me can do it. So if in anybody out there, that was really lucky by the way, if in anybody out there, because a lot of people want to make games, and it's very unsettling to me that a large amount of those people just think they can't because, well, A, they think that they have to be in a game studio to do it, but that's a lot less the case nowadays. Thankfully, indie is widespread and large enough that most people understand they can just make games on their own. But even past that point, there's a lot of people who are just like, well, I couldn't do that because I couldn't program, and that's upsetting to me. Wow, that was a weird bounce. Similar to that, I feel that a lot of people who think they wouldn't enjoy a game like this could find themselves having a surprisingly good time. Now, the frustrating aspects about it do exist, and that's not something I can entirely ignore. Though I kind of do ignore it, because the frustrating aspects don't really get to me. But I know that some people have a lot harder of a time with that kind of thing. And I mean, it's also the case that, like, a lot of people will just see the fact that the game doesn't save your progress in any way and think that it's a complete waste of time. And if you think that something like this is a complete waste of time, then yeah, it is. It's not for you. If you're the kind of person who think it's a complete waste of time to get good at any game, then this definitely ain't for you. But I think it's a uniquely interesting experience to get good at something at ground zero. Especially in, like, a media property. Well, media property is a weird term to use, because that's not exactly what I mean. A medium is probably the right word to use. Because it's like learning your first instrument, right? Like, learning your first instrument is a really difficult task. I kind of want to say learning your first language is similar, but I'm kind of in a boat where, I mean, I think everybody is in a boat where they mostly know at least one language, right? That was really close. So let's chalk that one up to learning your second language is the hardest. But at least from what I've heard from bilingual, trilingual, multilingual people, that learning other languages after your second language, it gets a lot easier. Now, there's definitely something to be said in the category of languages, talking about, like, oh, well, if you're just learning the Latin languages, then there's a lot of similarities, and etc., so that's obviously going to be easier between those, and if you switch to an Eastern language, it would be a lot harder, but you get what I'm saying. Typically, in one spectrum of learning or acquiring skill, whether it be instruments. I'm trying to think of other, like, physical activities. Because, like, obviously learning a language does apply, but it's a very exclusively kind of mental thing and has a lot to do with just memorization. There's no real, like, execution in presenting a second language, right? Like, it's just whether you remember it or whether you don't, whereas playing an instrument has a, you know, a physical aspect of it that actually tasks your ability to do it instead of your ability to understand it. Because you can understand music theory, and that's all great, but you might not be able to play the guitar. Because that has a lot of, you know, technical finger movements and placing and all that sort of thing. Woo! Little close to the edge there. So yeah, I'm trying to think of another physical thing. Because, like, playing games is similarly... physically taxing isn't the right word, but, like, it asks of you some level of physical dexterity. Not a lot. I mean, depending on the game. But there is a physical element to playing games. So yeah, I guess I'm just gonna stick with instruments, because that's the only thing I can think of. But similarly to how... I mean, it's harder for instruments, because there really isn't anything like this for instruments. Like, I guess switching to a different category of instruments is probably similar to this. Like, if you are used to playing string instruments, I'm sure the transition from guitar to bass is significantly easier than the transition from guitar to, I mean, even stand-up bass, or way out of the category like trumpet, right? And I mean, they might have similarities with what notes they can play and everything, but execution-wise, it's still going to be entirely new to you. So I guess that's the best thing to compare it to then. That was so close. Playing a game like this is similar to trying out a different family of instruments if you like playing instruments. Because I think a lot of people who play games would just straight up say they like playing games. But, I mean, even if you switch out to a different genre, there are still some basic things you're going to understand about playing games, right? And, like, a lot of genres take similarities. Like, obviously you're not going to find that much similarity in something like XCOM with Super Mario World, right? But to some degree, there's very few genres that actually completely change the way you input things to a character. And especially, like, within a genre, because, like, this is something that I would call a platformer, right? Like, what else would you call it other than getting over it? Like you're jumping. There are platforms. That's the easiest thing to call it. So, you know, within a genre, it's hard to find games that will be an entirely different experience with literally no transferable skill. So I find it uniquely interesting and quite the enjoyable time. Like, frustration part of it aside, like, you can make a game like this and have actual checkpoints. It's hard to say, honestly. It's hard for me to decide how I would feel about it. I think it would definitely be easier to approach for a larger audience, but not every game needs to be easily approached for a larger audience, and it's hard to say whether it would hurt or help the game. I think to some degree it would hurt it in my eyes, and I'm not saying that the frustration is an important part of it, but maybe I am. Maybe I am saying that, because that is just how learning new things is. New things is. I probably should have said are. Weird sentence. I think is might have been the right grammar there. Who knows? Maybe I need to learn English again. That's just part of how it goes, right? Like, when you're learning something new, things are going to be inherently frustrating because things aren't going to work properly. Now, very infrequently, when learning something new, are you going to have obvious regressions, which is the only... And that's not entirely fair to say for this game, because it's not like it's taking away your skill, right? Like, you're not regressing an ability. You are just losing progress towards completion. But completion is a very weird thing to equate your success to in this kind of thing, because, like, wasn't your end goal to get good at some completely new experience? And obviously, if you haven't made it to completion yet, then it's a sign that you aren't good enough yet. So sending you backwards, well, a lot of people will find that just too frustrating and needlessly punishing. I don't really see it as moving backwards that much. It's more of just retesting your abilities and something that you thought you had mastered, but clearly you haven't, or you wouldn't have fallen back there. It's like messing up a particular chord over and over again, and then going back to the fundamentals. I'm trying to bring it back to the instrument metaphor, but honestly, as someone who is not good at any instruments, is probably not capable of making the best instrument-related metaphor. Hopefully it wasn't completely nonsensical. Or even nonsensible. Again, whole English thing. I mean, I don't even know what the point of me correcting sensical into sensible, because it's still not a word. Damn it, dude. You will find frustration. Even the most tempered mind can be broken. And I definitely don't have the most tempered mind. Why did it set my percentage back to 74%? I thought I brought it back up to 90. Huh. Is it only counting it for this session? Because that's not how I thought it worked. But maybe I'm mistaken. Wouldn't surprise me. But I'm sure general gamer philosophy, quote unquote, is a weird backdrop to playing a game where you jump around on a pogo stick. probably not the dialogue most people expect when they tune into a stream of this game. But that's also weird that games like this are marketed so heavily towards the rage aspect of it. Because I never really see these as that. Like, it's so often looked down on as YouTube bait or streamer bait or something. Whoopsies. But, yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard, because, like, to some degree, like, you know... Oh, fuck, I shouldn't have gone that far. I can't blame the developers. Like, it is probably the best way to market this kind of game, right? Like, if you can get a YouTuber or streamer to play your game and, you know, be frustrated by it, that is incredibly good marketing. And incredibly cheap marketing, too. All you have to do is give away the copy of the game to whatever YouTuber or streamer you want, and make it free, you know? Make it freely accessible to them. You're just missing out on one sale, and could potentially benefit a lot from it, so... I'm definitely not gonna say, like, I wish it wasn't marketed as such. But I think to some degree, games like this get unfairly disrespected because of that level of marketing. Because, like, while I do have some issues with this game, I do genuinely think, like, this is a great game. Like, this is a experience unlike any other game that is, in my opinion, something really worth trying out. But I don't know. It's like some people... Like, I do think that it probably was the right decision for the game. Like, I think that, you know, if we could look at some parallel... Sick. Sick, dude. That actually wasn't the worst fall I've had from there, though. Although it's getting worse by the second. Oh my god. Okay, we're approaching the worst fall I've ever had from that. So yeah, I mean... I can drum up the rage and be like, wow, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. How could this happen? But I just can't see this game, or games like this, in that way. But if we were to look at some parallel world in which this game was marketed in a more... I don't want to say more respectable way, because I don't mean to say that the way it was marketed is disrespectful or shouldn't be respected or anything. But I do think if you took a more serious marketing approach and, like, just treated it as if it's, you know, a standalone, difficult game, it probably wouldn't have performed as well as it did, and maybe I wouldn't even be here playing it. So I think, like, literally the reason I got this game is because I saw a streamer I like playing it, right? And I said, hey, that's a game that is of a specific genre that I like and find interest in, so I'm gonna try it out. Now, even if the streamer I was watching was a particularly heavy, ooh, I'm going to rage at this kind of game streamer, I still would have gotten it. Though I maybe would have re-looked my decision in following that person, because I don't typically follow people like that. But, Anyways, the point I was making is, I do think that, to some degree, it hurt the way the game was perceived, but I don't blame the developers, because in all likelihood, it was the best marketing decision for them, and, you know, that you can't blame a developer for trying to make a living off of a game. Like, that is already really difficult to do, and gets harder and harder to do as the years go by. Gaming has become a fairly saturated market, and it's really hard to get noticed, even if you are a really unique and interesting game like this. So I definitely don't hold any sort of grudge against developers trying to get seen as much as possible. But I wish that the image surrounding these kinds of games wasn't always just focused on the, ooh, it's going to make you angry aspect. Because I feel like that, while I do think that more people have played it because it was, like, the word, oh, there I go. Because word of the game was spread farther due to being seen because of its marketing, I feel that, to some degree, but to a lesser extent, the marketing potentially steers some people away from it because they... Yo! Thank you for the follow. Because they look at it and go, well, that's a game designed to make me angry, so I'm not going to play it, right? I feel that more people would probably enjoy it than they think they would. That being said, there are some objectively frustrating things, like I've said. Like, not a lot of people can take the level of progress loss that I just took and laugh like I did. And I'm not saying I'm some special snowflake or whatever, but I just don't get that frustrated at games, and that's something I know about myself, so I have no issues with the setback, because I know I can get back to where I was in a relatively short amount of time. I know that if I've done it before, I can do it again, and I don't mind the temporary setback. Because I know, inevitably, like I said, it is just about getting good at this really weird skill set. So that's why I'm still playing. And that's why, eventually, you know, just by sheer amount of time spent, eventually I will beat the game. Because that's typically how difficult things go. If you don't give up on something, success is more or less inevitable. That was pretty sick. I got really lucky, and I got really unlucky there, but hey, I got lucky again. Speaking of things I don't like about this game, this section is my least favorite part of the game. I think the honey, or sap, or whatever you want to call it, was a bit of a misplay. Because in a game that is already about mastery of the controls, I feel it's a strange decision to put a substance that takes literally all control away from your character. And, yep, see ya. I'm not gonna do the stupid wall jump way of getting up, because that's where like 90% of my time was wasted on the last fruit section was just wall jumping to do it the stylish way. But that's like, I don't know, that's a lot of the fun. Is like, even if you're sent back to a section you've already beaten before, you can kind of style on it, you know? Do it in a way that you wouldn't have been able to previously, like that. Like, is that the intended way? No, but the game isn't really about beating it in any sort of intended way. It's about using whatever advantages you can get, and your eventual mastery of the movement to be able to climb the mountain in untraditional ways. But I probably rambled on a little bit too much on this topic, honestly. I feel like I've overstated a few things here and there. Pretty much nailed the nail in the coffin as hard as I could. Can he recover? I don't know, dude. That's a pretty tough angle to get, and because I've yeah, ooh, let's go. That was kind of sick. Damn it, I did like a full spin there and still didn't have it pop off. But like that's the sick shit I'm talking about, dude. Like, that's innately part of the fun, is even if I'm sent back to this section I've previously beaten, I get to test out my newfound abilities. Like, nothing about my character has changed. I am the same pogo stick man I was when I started playing the game 30 hours ago. But I am much, much more capable. And, like, I think the multiplayer aspect does kind of benefit that. Because even if you fall back to a previous section, not only do you get to style for yourself and be like, that was sick, but you get to, like, actively watch people playing the game for the first time, stumbling to do it normally, and you're just some fucking dickhead flying through it at lightning pace. Feels kinda sick. Yeah, I could tell. That was a really bad angle on that jump. But I'm getting back. Getting back there. Slowly, but surely. With many troubles along the way. I'm getting back. It's not going to be a smooth ride, but, you know, you don't expect a smooth ride when you sign up for this game. It is the definition of the journey, not the destination. Because, like, what is left? Again, outside of the fact that they've released a second map, like, literally a couple weeks ago. If we ignore that for the statement I was going to make, what is left after you reach the destination? I mean, like I said, people can speedrun, but most people aren't going to speedrun. Most people are going to be satisfied beating it and head on their merry way. Maybe sometime down the line, they invite a friend over, or maybe even potential lover, and say, you ever seen someone do this before? And then they beat Pogostuck on the spot, and wouldn't you know it, they get married. A beautiful story, isn't it? That's why I'm playing Pogostuck. Ignore everything I said for the past hour. Clearly, I'm playing Pogostuck to impress the ladies. Oh, dude, I'm so close to hitting the ceiling there, which is why I keep angling up like a dumbass. But it's nice. Like, it really, I don't know how to describe it. It's nice being in these areas that you've, that you've already succeeded in before. I don't find it stressful or even get nervous at all, really, about the, oh, well, that's annoying. Okay. Hit every single spike possible. Like, it's not nerve-wracking to me, the thought of falling back down. It's just fun. From start to finish. I am enjoying myself with the wacky movement I've shown some level of mastery over. Obviously not complete mastery, or I wouldn't still be here. But the more I am here, the more of that mastery I get. Okay, the spikes are kind of getting to me here, though. Some of these bonks I'm getting on my poor old Pogo, I feel should have been solid connections. Like, that was a solid connection? I feel like that was, like, as spiky as it could have been. Oh, come on. Sick nasty. You can, to some degree, like, you don't have that much control over the honey. Like, it's still mostly luck. Like, that time I touched the honey, there was literally nothing I could have done. It constantly faced me head first. Like, I can't get a pogo jump when I'm head first, right? Which is why I'm not the biggest fan of the honey. Because I really do think an important aspect of this, in minimizing the frustration and keeping things fun, is making sure that the player is always in control, and making sure that the player can recover if they mess something up. And for the most part, Pogostuck nails both of those things. That was pretty nice recovery there. Well, it's gonna be bad this time around, unfortunately. For the most part, Pogostuck nails it, but the honey is the extreme exception to that rule, in which it not only removes your ability to recover whenever you're affected by it in most cases, but worse of all, it makes you unable to recover because you're unable to control your character. So, takes away the two most important things, in my opinion. But that's for my own personal frustration, like I said. I'm sure that plenty of people just get frustrated falling down over and over again. I don't mind falling down because I messed up. Like, I didn't mind falling down to that mushroom just then. I know I messed it up. I find it very frustrating touching the honey and just not being able to do anything. Which, again, like, you can bring it down to the fact that I touched the honey in the first place. But I just don't like that removal of control at all. That is what will frustrate me the most. Because even if it was my fault that I touched the honey, in the end, it doesn't feel like my fault that I fell to whatever distance I fell to. Because I feel like if I had control over my character, I probably could have sorted things better after touching the honey. But it's a very minor complaint. It would have been a bigger complaint if honey was more prevalent. But it's literally only in this one section of the game, and it's a very small section. So I give the game a pass. At least I haven't seen it anywhere else. If it is in like the final 20% of the game, I will definitely be a little bit more frustrated, depending on how heavy the usage of it is, but at least the amount of honey I have seen doesn't seem incredibly upsetting. Just enough that I can complain about it in a vacuum, but won't say it makes the game worse or anything. I guess the other thing that I may find particularly frustrated is getting stuck in a section that I've already beaten hundreds of times. But that's just frustration with myself. It's not frustration with the game. It's just like, why the hell can't I do this shit anymore? God damn it, dude. I keep messing up my angles on the mushrooms. Oh! Bad time to hit your head. Nice recovery, though. That could have been much, much worse. Alright, so at this point, I am feeling like, I'll get to the palm tree checkpoint, and I'll probably switch to the next game. Because I don't want to be in a situation where I have to reclimb to that position again, because it's still, you know, it's always very, very easy to fall. It never gets harder to fall. You only get better at the game. But the obstacles remain the same. I mean, something about that is just kind of innately appealing. Again, I hate that. But something about, like, the mountain itself is appealing. I hate this. I hate it. Like, what do you want me to do, game? I can't do anything. Ugh. But the idea that there is just this ever-present, looming challenge, completely unchanging, is kind of cool. Like, even the mastery of a unique skill set aside, it's just kind of cool to have this noteworthy challenge entirely isolated. Something to overcome. Something that many, many people back out of. I mean, just look at how many people are on the leaderboard in this game versus how many people have beaten it. Alright. But, that being said, this isn't the end, but this is the end for now. Hopefully you found my mad ramblings enjoyable. I can already feel, like, the level of enthusiasm I have has dropped so drastically even from the start of the stream.